Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm John Holohan, president of SimplyThick. You know, there are some moments in your life you never forget, those special, magical, life-changing moments. And Friday, November 13th, 2015, precisely at 8 a.m. Mountain Time in Denver, Colorado, is definitely one of those moments in my life. I walked into this cavernous ASHA presentation hall to get to the bottom of this thing I'd been hearing about for a year, the International Dysphagia Diet Standardization Initiative. Admittedly, I walked in as a skeptic, but I walked out as a cheerleader and a convert. What I heard at that first presentation was a diet and a system that is practical and simple with all the tools that finally had a chance to really deliver on the challenge of serving exactly what is appropriate for each and every patient. It was a system that I thought could change the lives for many people for the better. And the world seems to think so too. We had 500 slots for today's presentation and we were oversubscribed. When I think back to that first presentation in Denver, there were probably 500 seats in the room, but there may have only been about 10% of them full. Peter Lamb might tell you a different number, and he might remember it a little differently, but that's just how I remember it. But what I do know for sure is that when Peter and I met afterward, I pledged the support of SimplyThick to IDDSI. I promised that my company would deliver 50 presentations in 2016. We probably even got close to doing that. We became a sponsor, and over the last couple of years, we've even had the privilege of being a platinum sponsor. And, you know, in February of 2018, we switched over completely to IDDSI colors and to IDDSI terminology on our labeling. I believe that was the first one in the US. And now this month, we even launched another packet size. I can't even believe we did that, but we actually launched slightly thick packaging here in the US. So it's been an incredible journey these last few years. And so when we were given this opportunity to host a webinar on the IDDSI platform, I knew that we had to share a real success story with the world. And I'm really excited and really proud to bring the story of SSM's journey to IDDSI implementation to this audience. I know you will enjoy it. To introduce today's main speaker, I am going to turn it over to Lori Berger, our local SimplyThick representative, because Lori and Amy have known each other for quite a while, so she really is the right person to introduce Amy to us. Lori?
Thanks, John. I'm pleased and honored today to introduce my friend and cohort, Amy Ryan. Amy received a Bachelor of Science degree from Purdue University in Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences and a Master of Science degree in Communication Disorders and Sciences from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. Amy has worked for SSM Rehabilitation Network as a speech-language pathologist since 2012 and has served as the Regional Rehab Therapy Manager for Speech Pathology since August of 15. She has initiated a step-by-step quality improvement process in order to increase safety and awareness of dysphagia in stroke patients. Amy has also developed new speech and swallowing programs and practice guidelines for head and neck cancer, stroke, and geriatric patients, and patients with TBIs, in addition to her published research for swallowing screeners. Amy currently holds membership with the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association and is past president and current board member for the Midwestern Adult Communication Disorder Group. In addition, Amy belongs to ASHA Special Interest Group 13, Swallowing and Swallowing Disorders, and ASHA Special Interest Group 11, Administration and Supervision. Before I turn it over to Amy, let's go through a few housekeeping reminders. All attendees are in listen-only mode. The panelists won't be able to hear or see you, and your microphone and video will remain off during the session. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on the IDDSI YouTube channel and website in a couple days. The webinar has not been pre-approved for CEUs, but a certificate of attendance will be emailed to anyone attending this live session along with a copy of Amy's slides. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please use the Q&A button function on the Zoom control panel to submit your questions. The panelists will do their best to answer as many as possible. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Lori, John, and everyone at SimplyThick and IDDSI. It is truly an honor to be here. Hopefully today I can provide some insight and encouragement for you to implement IDDSI at your facilities. Before we get started, we are going to share a quick poll on your screen that will pop up. Please answer, as this will give me an idea of what setting you work in. As soon as we have those results in, Alan will share them, and then we'll move forward.
Thanks, Amy. I'm just going to leave it up for a few more seconds. We have about 80% of attendees voted.
Great, thank you.
Okay, here are the results.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone, for participating in that poll. We do not need to go over my disclosures, but I will provide a little bit about me. I am a proud mother to 11-month-old Charlotte and wife to 411-month-old Max. A little humorous tidbit my husband encouraged me to throw in. I'm an avid runner and have completed multiple marathons and half marathons. I really enjoy travel, I'm sure like many of you, and have really missed it this year. I played soccer at the collegiate level and continue to have a strong love for the game. And I manage over 60 SLPs across 8 different hospitals in the St. Louis region. Today, I will be talking to you about implementing across the large acute care network. Our acute care network has 5 acute care hospitals and 2 inpatient rehab hospitals within the facility. So when you hear me talk today, I will be speaking to those hospitals in a regional format because we are all connected with regional and local leadership to help guide us through. On the screen, there are other divisions for which I work for, but today we will be talking about acute care. Today, I will be discussing IDDSI, but most importantly, I want you all to know that all of the resources that I have pulled and used have been from IDDSI.org. I would really encourage you all to peruse the newly updated website and also gather all your information and resources from there. There is 1 or 2 exceptions that we have made some edits to for our own use, and you'll see that. Most importantly, whenever I attended my first IDDSI webinar back in 2017, or IDDSI in-person meeting back in 2017, one thing that Peter and his colleagues talked about was the monitor, aware, and prepare, adopt phase and idea. So this is something that we have used and utilized all throughout our IDDSI implementation, and we continue to use and utilize today to ensure that our patients are remaining safe. Today, I'm just going to go through all levels of the implementation guide and what we did at our facilities to implement IDDSI. First, we are going to talk about the pre-planning stages. For any of you that are familiar with IDDSI and have perused the website, you know that there is a robust, detailed, and informative implementation guide for you to use. At our facilities, we also use Sodexo, which I'm proud to say is one of the pioneers of food service in changing over to IDDSI. Because of that, that partnership and also our regional model, we had to take and modify a few different parts of this implementation guide to fit our facility, something that IDDSI encourages all of you to do as well. So you will notice that this looks slightly different from what you might find on the website, but that is because we modified it for our facility. The dietitians that I directly work with also work for Sodexo. So we were able to have those and utilize those resources from Sodexo to help make our implementation guide, our implementation smooth, and our implementation guide worthwhile and relevant. You can see here that in the pre-planning stages, we were focusing on 4 things. We wanted to edit and pare down the implementation guide as it pertained to us, like I just mentioned. We also created and implemented a clinical care IDDSI multidisciplinary team. We created monthly meeting schedule so we would all be accountable for all the jobs that we were doing. We also wanted to determine our diet levels and the thickener that we would be using. Again, here is the IDDSI framework. It's important to note that when we started this initiative, easy to chew was not an option, but we have incorporated that and implemented it as we have gone throughout our implementation phase. I thought it would be important for you all to know who was part of our clinical care IDDSI implementation group. We had two teams. One, we had a local IDDSI team. And so all 5 of our acute care and both of our inpatient rehab hospitals had an IDDSI team. That was comprised of mainly 4 people: food service manager, the SLP, the registered dietitian, and any cooks or kitchen or line staff or chefs that were interested. Then we also had a regional IDDSI team. That included myself, clinical nutrition managers, and food service managers. We wanted to really make sure that each kitchen was having a unique plan for their unique site and situation, but that as a region throughout St. Louis and throughout our corporation, we were doing things pretty well the same. I won't go too much into what the roles were, but I do think that it is important for you all to know and to help you implement that different teams had the different roles. And so our local hospital IDDSI team, they were really a pioneer in our testing. And the regional team was a liaison and a more problem solving of our challenges and how, if there was roadblocks at our acute care facility, how we would come together as a region and overcome those as well. Again, like I said, I work for a large hospital network, but it also has a joint venture partnership and a local partnership. So we also developed a food and liquid conversion chart, and you will see this as a theme as well. But first, you'll see here that this is one of our earlier mock-ups where we were trying to get and convey the message that we were using old NDD terms and now what we were going to transition to for our IDDSI food and liquid. We decided at first to give all the information possible, meaning abbreviations, full names, and the color coded, because that was going to really show that there was a difference. Next, as you might imagine, we had to make a change in our thickener. And that was because we were using a powder thickener that wasn't reliable. About 10 years ago, we were using SimplyThick, and then our company changed to the powdered thickener. And then I knew before we implemented IDDSI, we needed to make a change. And that was because we were getting a lot of event reports on that patients were receiving thickened liquids that were either too thick or too thin, and we needed a safe and reliable option for our patients. That's where Lori and I started our relationship, and I believe that started in about 2017. And we started to focus on changing to SimplyThick, rolling out that initiative, which I could probably do a completely different webinar on, but that really was the catalyst to help drive our change. One thing to note as well, yes, we did start this initiative late 2017 and did not roll out until 2020. So it is an investment. You are in it for the long haul, and it is worth it. Every step of the way is worth it. Every challenge and every success has a beneficial outcome for you and for your hospital. So please note that it doesn't happen overnight, but it does take the hard work of you and your colleagues. Next, we're going to talk about beginning stages. And you'll notice today throughout this presentation, I keep going back to the implementation guide because it was exactly what we needed to follow to make sure we stayed on track. Now, I took out most of the notes in our implementation guide. You'll see there was one here because they did get kind of messy, but you will see the general theme and general idea. At first, we needed to make sure that we were discussing the changes with our colleagues, our peers, our associates, anyone in the hospital. But then we also knew we needed to do some background work. First, we made sure we had signage in common areas throughout the hospital. The kitchen, any staff areas, any nursing areas, any break rooms, even down in the basement in EVS. And also we needed to make sure that we were identifying our levels and what abbreviations and numbers or color coding systems we might use. Unfortunately for us, color coding wasn't going to work because of the way our system developed, which is so great that we had different options of numbers and abbreviations to move forward with. Again, some of these items that I will talk to you about today are not from IDDSI and not official IDDSI resources. And these are all things we developed early on before we were really knew what we were doing and going to IDDSI.org and using all the resources. But this is one of the first crosswalks that we use to get, again, an idea of the old terms and the new terms. We have one of these for solid food levels and liquid food levels. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides. You will get them in a copy at the end of the session or whenever you get your certificate. But we wanted to make sure we were having different ways to communicate for different learners. And you'll see it's kind of repetitive and repeats the same information. Same thing for liquid levels. We also decided based on this that we were going to use the terminology and also the number level, as it would most closely represent what we were using for NDD, and we thought that would be a good indicator for our existing tickets and our dual labeling, which we'll get to later. Next, we were really focused on integrating our dual labeling into our electronic programs. You'll see here that we had a little bit more responsibility and steps that needed to be completed in this phase. And so we wanted to determine what type of dual labeling abbreviation. We also wanted to determine how we would dual label. And then we also wanted to look at the food principles and the recipe testing so we could get a better idea of what was to come in our implementation process. It is important to note, next I'm going to talk about dual labeling. As we all know, if you've done any research with IDDSI, that dual labeling is so important, right? To get that buy-in from your team and get everyone on board from what is old to new. Recently, the Nutrition Care Manual and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and ASHA came together and said that they were going to start supporting IDDSI in 2019. I can't believe that was almost 2 years ago. But also, they did come out just recently, I think maybe just last week, that beginning in October of 2021, IDDSI will be the only modified diet recognized in the Nutrition Care Manual, and NDD diets and associated resources will no longer be included. And so hopefully within the next few months or by the end of the year, we will have some direction from IDDSI on how we should phase out that dual labeling. I wanted to show you, again, this might be hard to see on your screen, but I just wanted to show you a snapshot of our EHR or EMR, whichever word you like to use for your electronic medical record. And this is what our dual labeling looked like. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to show you a zoom in of this. So you can see here, this is what our dual labeling looks like currently in our EMR. You can see we have the new terms and then the old terms as they had already existed in our system. And then also we have that for both solids and liquids as well. We went through a lengthy approval process for this. So that was one of the biggest challenges that we had, was to get approval to change our current diet order. You all have unique systems in place for this. Hopefully it's a little bit easier for you than it was for our hospital system, but it is an integral and important step. The next thing we needed to change and do dual labeling on was our Health Touch modifiers. So Health Touch is the system that we use to input patient diet orders and for that to be communicated with the kitchen. So you call the operator, you order your lunch, this is the system that they will be using. Hopefully you guys have some experience with a system like this. This again was another big undertaking and another huge challenge because we had to go in and edit almost every food and liquid item to ensure that we could communicate effectively on the ticket, but also that we could give our cooks in our kitchen some information whenever they were preparing the meal and looking at the ticket. Just like a restaurant, our cooks and chefs and line staff use the ticket to make the tray. So we didn't have a lot of characters to use to give them any idea of what they would be preparing. So again, we tried our best. You can see some examples here on the screen for the different levels. Next slide here, I'm just going to show you what some snapshots of our tickets look like. I'll have some of these more later whenever we look at some case, but I just thought it would be interesting for you all to see how this comes across. You can see here in the roast beef, or roast turkey, I'm sorry, that we do have those modifiers present to give all of our kitchen staff members a chance to prepare the food exactly the right way. Like I said, we also have 2 inpatient rehab hospitals within our hospitals. And so it was important, and of course, they use a different electronic health record than what we use here on acute care. So we wanted to make sure that they had a diet crosswalk so they could adequately use their diets and know what to order on our EHR. So they have their own EHR, but in order to get the tray, they use our kitchen. And so there has to be a crosswalk. So again, this is another integral part if you do have campuses that share food service, or you have different units that might be working on a different system than you all. Like I mentioned earlier, our local IDDSI team had a recipe testing team, and that included the food service manager, speech language pathologist, and registered dietitian. As most of you are trying to figure out how this will look like for your site, I can tell you that testing and logistics of testing were, again, another big challenge for us. But once we had that sorted out, it made it a lot easier. So anyone that has any experience in a commercial kitchen knows that it can be chaotic and that there are a lot of different factors. And something that we experience here locally is that we have a lot of turnover in our kitchen. And so we wanted to make sure that we were training efficiently and effectively. These next 2 slides give a lot of details of what we did for testing. And again, they will be included on your handouts. But we sent these next 2 slides out to our staff via email to give them some guidelines on who will be responsible for which item. So we made each hospital responsible for a breakfast or lunch, a mealtime. So they knew that that site, let's say at St. Mary's, was just focusing on breakfast. That really pared down the global thinking of we have to modify every single diet. And then we just had some guidelines. They would do an audit sheet, and then they would also follow different guidelines to make sure that the food passed or failed. One thing where we went rogue on our implementation plan was our food testing. In the implementation guide, it does speak to doing food testing first. I'm sorry, it speaks to doing training first and food testing second. For our sites, we determined that doing food testing initially would allow for us to get a pulse of where we were. How are we currently at preparing our food? Were our MDD diets prepared accordingly to our interpretation? And is that close to the IDDSI diets? Once we started that process, we really determined that our food wasn't too bad, actually. We were pretty close to IDDSI. And so when we decided to go ahead and modify recipes, excuse me, instead first, and then we would go ahead and train our kitchen staff. Before we have to go further, I do want to, and we will get back to testing and auditing, but I do want to talk about policy changes. That is what was next in our implementation. As all of you know who work in a hospital setting, policy drives a lot of what we do. And so it was really important that we updated our policies. So we were not just working based off the nutrition care manual and not what ASHA said, but we had our own driven policies that were moving away from the national dysphagia diets and to the IDDSI diets. Separately, we worked as a as a region at our different hospitals, but it was also really easy because we have that regional model. So once one got approved, we were able to implement to all of our sites. Another thing to know about the policy is that we consider it a living document. And so we can make changes, and actually based on what just came out from the Nutrition Care Manual and also the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, we will be updating this as needed. Next, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of staff training, something that I know all of you are interested in. So here on the page, you will see that staff training includes a long list of items or jobs to be done. We will go into these items detail on the next several slides. So diet modification training. As I said initially, we wanted to give our chefs, our line cooks, the ability to be successful. And to do that, our primary driven focus is to deliver the why. If our kitchen staff know why we are changing diets, why these modified diets are safer for patients, the reasoning, then we have found success in all other implementation and in all other aspects of our hospital. So it was important to deliver the why here as well. So we wanted to make sure that our speech language pathologists were educating on dysphagia, the risk to patients, our role throughout the hospital, because some of these colleagues of ours don't know. And then also the dietitian or the food service manager would explain the diet modifications, how to follow recipes, and also quality control. We decided to do staff training schedule. So we would do our roving in services on our staff training schedule. So that included kitchen staff, line cooks, and dietary workers. And they were trained on diet modifications, new recipes, and food modifications. So as I said previously, we took our entire existing menu and we tested every single item to see what needed to be changed. And that was done at both the local and the regional level. For the staff training, then we knew going into it that we would just be telling them the recipes are going to look different. You might need to use some new or different techniques to prepare this food. We are going to talk about this today. The why is because it's going to keep our patients and each other and ourselves safe. So this is where tray assembly and production changes come into effect. This is our implementation guide. And the first thing that we needed to do was prepare the tray line. Ultimately, as the speech language pathologist, I let the food service managers and dietitians lead the kitchen training. As the old saying goes, I wanted to make sure I stayed in my lane. Each kitchen had something different and unique that they needed to train their staff on based on equipment or just the culture. We knew that we had to, again, evaluate all of those items, those kitchen equipments in the kitchen to make sure that we knew what we were working with. We knew we couldn't just say, oh, for minced and moist, you're going to turn the Roboku on for 5 pulses, because each kitchen might have a different Roboku. Their blades might not be as sharp. There's several factors. One challenge that we did notice when we were modifying recipes is that purees were our most difficult consistency. So we really had to work hard at the purees. But I will say, and what we'll get into in a few minutes, is the best quality indicator that IDDSI has developed is the timed audit sheets. And we were really able to use these to help create and prepare our kitchen staff for what they would be trained on and for what they would be assessed on as well and audited on. The next few slides here, I'm not going to spend time on. I just wanted to show you all some different pictures and slides that we had used in our kitchen to post to show everyone where we were moving towards and what would be needed. Another thing that I want to speak on before I go to those next slides is that I think one of the biggest misconceptions or challenges that people think that they are going to face when implementing IDDSI is that every day with every tray, with every food item, you're going to have to do testing. And that's just not the case. Once you do upfront training, you modify your recipes, and you get your kitchen staff familiar with new techniques, you have a smooth process set up for auditing, but your tray line is not going to have to test every single food item. You are going to give them the tools to prepare the food correctly, and the rest is seamless. So once we got through that misconception within our region, it was really smooth sailing as far as anxiety and workload went. Again, these next few slides are just examples of what we printed and put in our kitchen so people would be familiar with the auditing process and how the food should present so it would pass these. These were all left up in the beginning stages of our testing, and now we have of our implementation, I'm sorry, and now we have made sure that we have refined these to meet the needs of our staff and where we are. Again, we just had these examples. If you've been, know IDDSI, you've seen all of these. I did not recreate the wheel here. We just wanted some simple formatting and verbiage to be able to show them what to do and give them reminders while they were in the kitchen. Sodexo created some of these. I call them like a Subway menu or how to build a sandwich kind of thing that you might see at another restaurant. But these were really helpful initially for our staff. These were created very early on. And so you will see there is some liquid in that number 4 picture that might not pass now based on modified guidelines. But I do think that these are helpful for the kitchen staff to utilize. We are all about visuals at our facility. The more pictures, the more visuals, we felt like the more success we had. And then, as I said earlier, easy to chew and transitional foods were not something that we had initially thought about rolling out, but we did go back and modified our training based on these new guidelines that IDDSI had put out at that time. Again, you guys can see these and get an idea for all of these at the end whenever you can get these slides sent to you. Okay, I think probably the hottest topic in the continuing of the topic that is, I guess, the hot topic going forward, and it will continue to go forward, is auditing. And auditing is really your bread and butter of anything in the hospital to make sure that you are doing an effective job and you are keeping everyone safe. So auditing is something that we still continue to do. We have rolled out IDDSI just shy of 12 months ago. We rolled out on February 6th, 2020, and we are still doing audits. And I will show you what those look like and what those trays look like in the next few slides here. The most important thing that we established was creating an audit schedule. Everybody on the clinical care IDDSI team has a responsibility for auditing, myself included. So each hospital at the local level created an auditing regimen that would work for them. But one thing that we did want to stress is that you should not audit the same day of the week and the same time every day, because you're likely going to only hit 1 or 2 of your line cooks or your kitchen staff. So every week still, our local hospitals are coordinating who's going to take which tray time and which meal time in the foods that are being offered. So all of our recipes are tested pretty standardly throughout. And we also are hitting all of those different meal times. We want to avoid audits on the same day of the week so we can get different staff members. And then again, another, probably one of the most important things I can tell you here today is make sure that you have a plan for feedback when errors occur. That can be a downfall. If you can recognize an error, but you can't implement changes, then you really might have some roadblocks to overcome. We complete audit sheets, which again, IDDSI has done a beautiful job creating these audit sheets. We use these and print these off every day of the week at all of our hospitals. These audit sheets get filled out every time there is a tray audit. There is one sheet for every food item, and then one sheet for every liquid item that is being tested. Every one of my facilities, they fill out this. So let's say we're testing mashed potatoes. They would fill out one of these for mashed potatoes. If they all pass, then they send those in to our quality director so she can see that we are doing these audits. If they fail, we do a local root cause analysis. And what that means is the SLP or myself get with the dietitian and the kitchen manager, and we say what went wrong. Most of the time, it's a simple that the recipe wasn't followed. And we can go back and say, oh, you missed this step. You didn't put this in the Roboku for 6 seconds. You only did it for 3. And that's why we don't have our particle size. Then we can just do some immediate on the line training right there and get the problem solved. If we go back and say, we ran this again, we followed the recipe and it still continues to fail, then that's when we take it to our regional IDDSI group and we do some testing. We put our heads together with our chefs and our kitchen managers and we see maybe we had to order a different product. Maybe this is a different chicken breast than what we had originally tested on from our supplier. So now we have to go back and retest this item. You will continue to do this all throughout the entire time you have implemented IDDSI, because that is the only way to ensure that every roadblock or every bus stop, like I say, along the way is meeting its needs, meeting its requirements and its expectations. This is where NDD did not implement any of these, and this is really where IDDSI is picking up and really has shown us as a leader what we can do to keep our patients safe. Because at the end of the day, that is what matters most. Next here, I just wanted to show you a picture of what our trays look like. So this is a soft and bite-sized tray. And actually, this is one that I was just ordered recently this morning, one of my colleagues did. So you can see here that there is a ticket with the tray, and at our facilities, every dysphagia diet gets a manager check on the line to ensure that the food is prepared correctly before it gets to the patient. So this is what our soft and bite size looks like. For those of you asking about or questioning the gravy, this gravy has been thickened and it passes testing based on the IDDSI audit sheets. That is the only way we've gotten gravy to pass is to thicken it, and that has been a challenge. Now, because I don't want to paint a rosy picture that we do everything perfectly and accurately, because we are human and make mistakes, this is another tray. Same thing, I believe it's turkey, roasted turkey. So this is a minced and moist diet. And you will see that those green beans do not pass. So for this instance, we mark it on our audit sheet that it doesn't pass. And then we take that down, the SLP went down immediately, found the person who made this tray and talked to them about what they were doing. You will also see here, I wanted to include the ticket because again, like we talked about earlier, those modifications in Health Touch are also included here. And so you will see that under green beans, we have that they need to drain the liquid, that they are minced and well cooked. But I think we need to add a modifier on that because our green beans did not come out very well. You will also know that we don't have any gravy on these mashed potatoes, and that was just the way they ordered it today. If we are including gravy, we are thickening it to meet the standard that is ordered for that patient. Again, just to show you that we are not perfect, here you can see where there are just some errors in our tray. So this is our easy to chew. We are phasing out mechanically soft and only using easy to chew. So you can see the dual labeling here at the bottom. You will also see all of these manager checks here, but you will see that some of these are prepared incorrectly. Now, I don't have tray pictures to show you, but some of these items do not match what should be down here. Like my SLP made a note, there was no chicken in the pasta. And then this spaghetti noodles were cut up small, but again, it wasn't prepared correctly. And then on the left side, you can see that our blueberry muffin was pureed on this diet, and it shouldn't be on Easy to Chew. And that the boiled egg actually wasn't prepared as it said on the ticket. So again, there will be mistakes. You will need to continue to audit, but that is the beauty of IDDSI, is that we have the tools to audit to, again, like I keep saying, to keep patients safe. Next, we're just going to talk about the hospital-wide training and communication plan. We did a lot of nursing training because we wanted to make sure our nurses had the buy-in as well. So here is what IDDSI and Sodexo included in the implementation guide. And next, you kind of give a picture of how we did nursing education. So we have nursing council meetings, and luckily we were able to do these in person before the pandemic started. So we were doing these about this time last year. Our SLPs went to nursing council meetings and explained IDDSI and the purpose. They also showed all the signage that would be used throughout the hospital, and we distributed that to nursing leaders. Within this education too, we also had some nursing leaders perform some testing to see the differences and to look at how the food would be prepared. And then again, a common theme for us in our hospital is using roving huddles. So we went to huddles all throughout the hospital for several weeks, starting about this time last year, leading up to the 2 weeks before go live. And we would give short, quick, and simple huddles with nurses to tell them about the changes and what they could expect. We needed nursing to have a buy-in for identifying if food was prepared incorrectly, and also knowing that they had a lifeline to us to call the SLPs and the dietitians to tell us when food wasn't being prepared correctly. We wanted to also tell them that the swallow signs that we use in the hospital to show which patients are on which diet, that verbiage would be changing, and that is important as well. Again, nursing buy-in is critical and key. So then we went to go live. And so go live is really your smooth sailing because you've done so much preparation before then. And again, I misspoke. I think I said the 6th of February earlier, and it was actually the 13th. So we changed recipes as we were working through the implementation plan. Like I said, we were doing that real-time recipe changing, real-time training in the kitchen. We set a go live date of 2/13/20. And for us, this meant that we would start our system-wide auditing, and we would have immediate action if food was deemed failed or unsafe per diet standards. And then we also, during the 8 weeks of our go live, we wanted to make sure that we were really focusing on kitchen support and being there as dietitians and SLPs in the kitchens every day. At least one of us went to the huddles to answer any questions that were coming up. And we thought that was really a big indicator of success. So a few oddities that we noticed was that Abbott, we use Abbott supplements in our facilities. And so Abbott was using a 4-phased approach for publishing IDDSI testing results. And at that time, they hadn't really done a lot of testing, but I am happy to know that they did. This is a really probably hard copy to see, but it's better on the handout. You can see here that their different products are listed, and then on the right side, they have the IDDSI level. So usually your supplements are going to test out at about slightly thick. So that's something that we continue to work on with our nutritional supplements to make sure that those are safe for our patients as well. And then from an SLP perspective, we wanted to make sure that our barium was safe. We use the MBS-IMP at our facilities, and so we use Veribar. And you can see here that there's just evidence that nectar, thin honey, and honey all test out at the appropriate levels for our Varibar. So that was something that was very important for us to ensure that what we're testing for our patients in the modified barium swallow is what we are delivering to our patients on their trays as well. I know that we have a lot of Q&As coming in, or questions coming in, so hopefully we have some time here to answer those.
Thank you, Amy, for a very informative webinar. My name is Liz Fiala, and I'm the marketing coordinator at SimplyThick. I'll be moderating today's Q&A. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please enter them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your webinar screen. Now, let's get started. Our first question comes from Allison. With your IDDSI transition, does your menu include transitional foods and/or mixed consistencies?
Yes, it does, because as an SLP, we believe that transitional foods and mixed consistencies are vital to help with the therapeutic process of patients' improvement. And so we are utilizing those, and we did implement those as well. We have tested those as transitional foods. I will tell you that most of the time we are not ordering those foods for our patients, but the SLPs are using that in therapeutic practice with our patients whenever we're seeing them. And we're also giving instructions to nursing. Hey, this person can have some graham crackers and I want them to have them, or Cheetos, or whatever the transitional food is, but we are not going to put them on that diet right away. We just want to try it and do some therapeutic trials at first. So yes, we are utilizing those within our process. I will tell you that we focused on pureed, minced and moist, soft and bite-sized first, got a good system down with that, and then started on those mixed consistencies in transitional foods.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Laura. Did you teach nurses to assess/test liquids at bedside?
Yes, we did teach nurses to test and assess liquids at bedside with the flow test, the syringe flow test, because again, we know that that is a standardized approach to get the best answer instead of just taking a spoon and eyeballing it. So we have taught nurses how to complete flow testing.
The next question comes from Elizabeth. Is dual labeling the same as a diet crosswalk?
No, dual labeling is what we took to change our current diet system. So we were using NDD. So let's use mechanically altered. That is our old NDD terminology. Mechanically altered is now minced and moist with IDDSI. So on our dual labeling, on our EPIC and on our communications within the notes, we wanted to make sure that anytime someone saw minced and moist, they also saw mechanically altered, so they knew what the new terminology meant. Our crosswalk is for if you have sites within your facility that haven't transitioned to IDDSI yet, you can and might use different terminology than a dual labeling. That is a comparison, so they know what is used at their facility, what's used at our facility, and what those equivalents are. So they are similar, but they are not the same.
Thank you. Question from Nancy. What is the average daily patient census at the acute care settings?
Yes, so our average total and combined at all 5 of our acute facilities, we have 1,500 beds. And so some of our sites are larger with 500, and our lowest one is, I think, about 150 at max capacity. So we have a large system with many beds throughout all 5 of those locations. And then our inpatient rehab hospitals each have 35 beds each.
Another question from Elizabeth. Did you test thickness of supplements at different temperatures and using different commercial thickeners?
We tested supplements at different temperatures, yes. If you've looked at the IDDSI audit sheet, you know that you have timed testing. So at service, 15 and 30 minutes. We did this for cold products and we did this for room temperature products as well. We only tested the thickener that we currently use, which is SimplyThick. If we have a patient discharging on supplements, we sometimes ask the patient or their family to bring in the thickener that they will be using at home, and we do a how-to guide on that. We also have some going home kits or from SimplyThick that include some of that thickener that we really encourage them to utilize as well.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to give you a break to take a drink of water or maybe a breath because we have several questions revolving around bread and bread products. So John Holohan, I'd like to invite you back for a moment and direct this next question to you.
Okay.
John, is there a solution to providing a bread option on IDDSI?
Well, generally speaking, what people have been doing is they've been using what are they called? Slurried bread products, and they can be difficult. One of the things that happened over the last, I don't know, like 8-9 months, while I've had a bunch of salespeople sitting at home, is that they've been playing around with a baked bread recipe that's comes out very delicate and very nice and very bread tasting. It's a recipe we're about to release on the world, but right now it's in kind of beta testing in about 20 or 30 nursing homes to see that it really does pass all the IDDSI tests. So people are actively working on these solutions, and it is something that the world is looking for a good solution for.
And Liz, I could just add one thing that we did at our facilities is that as all of the IDDSI material states, you can modify foods that are allowed at your facility and not allowed. There's some variability of what you will allow and not allow. We were able to test French toast and pancakes to be able to provide those on soft and bite size because they passed our testing, and we needed something to provide for breakfast for that item. And so we have been using a mixture of the slurried products and preparing those products that way as well.
Thank you both. That's very informative. Now, along the same lines about food, our next question comes from Holly. How are you keeping your mashed potatoes from being sticky or too dry and pasty?
That's a great question. It has been, mashed potatoes have been a labor of love. We have been adding, we use flakes, if you will. So we're not actually using a real potato. And that has allowed us to add more liquid if needed. And that has really led us to get a good product. So if you're not using flakes or dried potato product or whatever the correct term is for that, you might want to try that.
And question from Laura, how do you handle condiments like syrup, barbecue sauce, etc.?
Great question. I just had someone email me about salad dressing because we have someone on thickened liquid diets, but on a regular diet. So we test those with a flow test, and if a patient is on thickened liquids, then we thicken those condiments appropriately.
And our next question comes from Denise. How do you get your vegetables to minced and moist? That has been a struggle for us, and we have had to use pureed. Any assistance would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, Denise, minced and moist is a challenge. We are using a Roku, and we are using mostly really well steamed products or canned vegetables, and that has really helped us. There's a fine line of being able to drain. We drain before we put it in the Roku, and we also drain it after, and that has helped us. We sharpened all of our Roku blades, which had not been done in quite a while, so you might want to try that, or sharpen the blade of whatever product you are using, but that might be helpful. Drain, do the Roku, then drain again, and that's been really beneficial.
Next question, are there published IDDSI competencies for SLPs, RDs, ordering providers, nursing staff, etc.?
We created our own competencies at our facility. Peter might be able to answer if they are creating any in the works from their standpoint.
What about creamer on a thickened liquid diet?
Yeah, you guys have some great questions. We use powdered creamer here. And so we have tested that with our coffee or our tea, and done a flow test, and that has not changed the outcome of the thickened product.
Thank you. Next question. What documentation or training was provided to nursing in regards to providing dysphagia patients food items safely from the patient food pantry located on the nursing unit?
Great question. We put a guide in the nursing nutrition rooms that said what could be allowed on the different diets. So let's say we have applesauce, right? That could be allowed on all of them. We kind of took those items that are in the nutrition room and made a cheat sheet on the refrigerator so it was easy for them to see.
Thank you. Next question comes from Maria. Does Sodexo's national base menu include the IDDSI diets?
Yes.
And from Angela, you said initially you were not going to have easy to chew, but then taught it after all. Why were you not going to have it initially, and what changed your mind? Is it orderable in your EHR?
We had many debates over if mechanical soft was equivalent for easy to chew. We did not want to create a separate easy to chew diet because we didn't want to throw something else into the mix. So initially we decided to table it so it wouldn't halt our work. And then after we completed testing and implemented our other diets, we saw that yes, easy to chew, the way that we were preparing, mechanical soft, the way that we were preparing it at our facility was the same or similar to easy to chew. And that is what changed our mind. And to be honest, when easy to chew came out, we were kind of, very deep into this process, and we didn't want to think of one other thing, but more literature and training came out, and that really provided us the push to go to easy to chew.
Thank you. And for our final question, for patients on level 4 puree, but level 0 or thin liquids, do you restrict broth? Do you still thicken gravy if they are on a thin liquid?
That's a great question. We do thicken broth we thickened the condiments if they are on thickened liquids. Now, the exception to that is items like the chicken, which you just saw on my minced and moist. We do add gravy and thicken it if that's the only way that we can get the menu to pass per the audit sheets and the guidelines. And so it's not really a blanket answer.
And that concludes our Q&A session for the webinar. Thank you, Amy, so much for all of your insight, and thank you for all of your submissions. Now, I'd like to hand it off to our president, John Holohan, for concluding remarks.
Thanks, Liz, and thanks, Amy. I just want to backtrack real quick on the question about competencies. The U.S. has just formed what are known as IDDSI reference groups. And what that is it's a group of U.S. professionals that are going to help facilitate and communicate about IDDSI and hopefully produce regionally appropriate resources. So like the question on competencies, that is something that we are going to ask those US-based reference groups to go out and produce those type of things. One of the committees will work on that, and hopefully in the next 6 months to a year or something, there'll be something that'll be on the IDDSI website in the USA part. If you're interested in being a part of the reference groups, you can send an email to usa@iddsi.org. They're just forming. We're just having the first committee meetings. Like we have another one tomorrow. We had one earlier this week. But it's a good way to get involved if you're an IDDSI cheerleader and you want to be a cheerleader and help us out as we're developing some of those things. But I think this has been a fabulous hour, and I really want to thank you, Amy, for sharing your IDDSI implementation with us. I know I learned a lot. I got a few things we need to talk about later. Some more questions I have for you. And I really want to thank IDDSI for giving us a chance to share this story with you. I know it was a lot of work, and it's great to be able to share it to everybody. And I want to thank IDDSI and the IDDSI board for all their hard work, dedication, and commitment over the years. These people have real full-time jobs, and they've been doing this for many, many years at this point. And what they've done is really special, and what they're doing for people all over the world will serve them today and in the future is just incredible. Personally, I want to thank Peter Lamb for changing my life back in 2015 when he opened my eyes to the possibility of this. And I want to thank each of you for taking the time out of your day to be with us. And thank you for being supporters and believers in IDDSI. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.